The fading stars of football. You know how it goes in football. 1 minute you're the next big thing, and the next you're yesterday's news. I've been thinking about some of those players who burst onto the scene and had us all excited, only to leave us wondering what could have been. Let's chat about a few of them, shall we? Ricardo Quaresma. First up, we've got Ricardo Quaresma. Remember him? Portuguese fella, born in '83. He was something else when he first came on the scene. I mean, the way he could curl that ball with the outside of his foot, the trivela they called it. Pure magic, that was. He started out at Sporting CP and had everyone talking about him. Big clubs came sniffing around, and Barcelona snapped him up. You'd think that'd be it, right? Quaresma at Barca, match made in heaven. But football's not that simple, is it? Poor lad just couldn't settle. Didn't get on with the manager, Frank Rijkaard. Must have been tough for him, all that expectation. Before you knew it, he was off again. Ended up bouncing around a bit, into Milan, Chelsea, you name it. Never quite found his feet anywhere for long. Don't get me wrong, he had his moments, did well at Porto, played for Portugal in some big tournaments, but consistency, not his strong suit. Always felt like he was this close to greatness, but never quite got there. Bit of a shame, really. Still, that trivela, when it came off, it was something to see. Yaya Toure. Next up, let's talk about Yaya Toure. Now there was a player who could do it all. Born in Ivory Coast in '83, same year as Quaresma, funnily enough. Yaya really made his name at Barcelona, part of that team that won everything in 2009. 6 trophies in 1 year. But it was at Manchester City where he really became a superstar. I remember watching him in his prime, and it was like he was playing a different sport to everyone else. The way he'd pick up the ball in midfield and just glide past players, it was effortless. He was crucial in City's rise to the top. Scored some massive goals too. That FA Cup semi-final against United, the winner in the final. Then there was that season he scored 20 goals from midfield. 20 from midfield. Unreal. But as he got older, things started to change. There were whispers about his attitude, his work rate. Seemed like he was falling out with the management more often than not. By the end of his time at City, he was barely getting a game. Crazy to think about given how important he'd been. After City, he had a go in Greece and China, but it wasn't the same Yaya. Retired without much fanfare. When you think about how good he was at his peak, it's hard not to feel like there should have been more. But that's football for you. Doesn't always have the ending you expect. Adriano. A real heartbreaker is Adriano, the legend with 99 power in the Pro V Evolution soccer games. They called him the Emperor, and for a while there, he really did rule the football world. Watching him at Inter Milan and thinking, he's unstoppable. He had everything: strength, skill, a left foot like a traction engine. He was tearing it up in Serie A and doing the business for Brazil too. Led them to victory in the 2004 Copa America. Looked like the natural successor to Ronaldo. But then, well, life happened. His dad passed away, and it hit him hard, really hard. He started struggling with depression, turned to drink. His performances on the pitch became erratic. 1 week he'd look like the Adriano of old, the next he'd be anonymous. Inter Milan stood by him for a while, but eventually, even they had to let him go. What followed was a sad cycle of comebacks and setbacks. He'd return to Brazil, look like he was getting back on track, then things would fall apart again. He had stints at Sao Paulo, Flamengo, Roma, Corinthians, each move accompanied by hope that this would be where Adriano would rediscover his mojo. But it never quite happened. It's a tough one to watch, Adriano's story. When you saw him at his best, you couldn't help but think he was destined for greatness. He had this combination of power and skill that was just devastating. But football, like life, isn't always fair. Personal tragedy derailed what should have been one of the great careers of his generation. 1. Sebastian Veron. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about one Sebastian Veron. They called him La Brujita, the Little Witch. And when he was on his game, it really did seem like he was casting spells with that football. Veron made his name at Lazio. He was the conductor of that great Lazio team that won Serie A in 2000. The way he dictated play was mesmerizing. He wasn't the quickest, but he didn't need to be. His brain worked faster than anyone else on that pitch. His performances in Italy caught the eye of Sir Alex Ferguson, and in 2001, Manchester United broke the British transfer record to bring him to Old Trafford. The football world was buzzing. Veron in the Premier League, it seemed like a match made in heaven. But Veron's time in England was, well, let's say it didn't go according to plan. The pace and physicality of the Premier League seemed to catch him off guard. Where in Italy he had time and space to pick his passes, in England he often found himself hurried and harried. It wasn't that Veron became a bad player overnight. There were still moments where you'd see his class. A perfectly weighted through ball, a clever turn to evade a defender. But these moments were frustratingly inconsistent. For every good game, there seemed to be 2 or 3 where he struggled to make an impact. After 2 years at United, Veron moved to Chelsea, but his struggles continued. It seemed that no matter how hard he tried, he just couldn't adapt to the English game. In 2004, he returned to Italy with Inter Milan, initially on loan and then permanently. After leaving England, Veron went home to have success back in Argentina with Estudiantes, the club where he started his career. He helped them win the Copa Libertadores in 2009, proving that class is permanent even if form is temporary. Bojan Krikic. Right, let's talk about Bojan Krikic. Now there's a cautionary tale if ever I saw one. Born in 1990, came through the Barcelona Youth Academy. They were calling him the next Messi before he'd even kicked a ball for the first team. His first season in the first team was impressive. He scored 10 league goals, looking every bit the wonder kid we'd been promised. But then, well, it's hard to put your finger on what exactly went wrong. Maybe it was the pressure, maybe he peaked too early. Whatever it was, Bojan's progress seemed to stall. As the seasons went by, Bojan struggled to nail down a regular place in the Barca team. The goals dried up, his confidence seemed to ebb away. It was tough to watch. Here was a lad who'd been built up as the next big thing, and he was visibly struggling with the weight of expectation. In 2011, Bojan left Barcelona for Roma. It was meant to be a fresh start, a chance to rebuild his career away from the pressure cooker of the Camp Nou. But it didn't work out that way. He struggled in Italy, then had disappointing loan spells at Milan and Ajax. In 2014, Bojan made a surprising move to Stoke City in the Premier League. It was a far cry from the heights that had been predicted for him, but you know what? For a while, it looked like it might be the making of him. Away from the spotlight, playing in a team where he was a big fish in a smaller pond, Bojan started to show flashes of his old self. But even this renaissance was short-lived. Injuries and loss of form saw him lose his place in the Stoke team. Loan moves to Mainz and Alves followed, before he ended up in MLS with Montreal Impact. Mario Balotelli. Now, Mario Balotelli, there's a character and a half. The absolute peak of a flaky footballer. Italian striker with a penchant for, shall we say, interesting off-field tactics. Balotelli had it all, didn't he? Skill, strength, confidence bordering on arrogance. Started off at Inter Milan, part of that treble-winning side in 2010, then moved to Manchester City, where he really made his name, both on and off the pitch. On his day, Balotelli was unplayable. That performance against Germany in Euro 2012, unreal. But for every moment of brilliance, there seemed to be a controversy waiting around the corner. Setting off fireworks in his bathroom, throwing darts at youth team players, you name it, Mario probably did it. His career became a bit of a roller coaster after City. Stints at Milan, Liverpool, Nice, Marseille, even ended up in Turkey at one point. Always the same story. Flashes of brilliance mixed with long periods of frustration. You can't help but feel that Balotelli could have been one of the greats if he'd just focused a bit more on football. But then again, would he have been the Mario we all came to know and love? Or hate, depending on your perspective? It's a funny one, isn't it? Micah Richards. Last but not least, let's talk about Micah Richards. Came through the ranks at Manchester City. And let me tell you, when he first broke into that City team, he looked like the real deal. Built like a tank, quick as lightning, and good on the ball too. Became the youngest defender to play for England when he made his debut in 2006. Everyone thought he was going to be England's right back for the next decade or so. For a while, it looked like that might happen. He was a key part of that City team that won the Premier League in 2012. But then, well, injuries started to take their toll. Lost his place in the City team, never really got it back. Had a go in Italy with Fiorentina, but that didn't work out. Ended up at Aston Villa, but more injuries meant he barely played. Retired in 2019, and now he's doing bits on TV. Seems like a top bloke, to be fair. It's a shame how it turned out for Micah. Makes you realise how fragile a football career can be. One bad injury and it can all go up in smoke. At the end of the day, though, these players all had their moments. They all did things on a football pitch that most of us can only dream of. Maybe they didn't quite hit the heights we expected, but they've all left their mark on the game in their own way. So, here's to the shooting stars of football. They may have faded, but for a while there, they lit up the sky. And that's worth celebrating, isn't it?